I had already signed the departure orders when Captain Illyra blocked the hangar ramp with her body. She was smaller than me, slimmer too, her iridescent blue skin marked with the faint silver veins common to the Ashari, but there was nothing small about the way she stood. Her crest was flattened tight against her skull, a sign of stress or fury. I couldn't tell which, and her dark eyes locked onto mine with a force that made the engine hum of the dropship fade into background noise. "You can't go," she said. The words echoed across the hangar, drawing stares from mechanics, dock officers, and a few Marines who had learned, wisely, to pretend they were deaf when senior officers argued. I stopped a meter away from her. "Move, Captain. This mission is a death sentence," she snapped. "You know that." I did know. Everyone did. The Virex Combine had fortified the Kepri Rift with enough automated kill platforms to shred a fleet. Command needed someone to run a one-way insertion, sabotage the anchor gate from the inside, and strand the Combine's invasion arm on the wrong side of the galaxy. Someone human. Because humans survived things other species didn't. Because humans were, statistically speaking, expendable in ways alliances preferred not to say out loud. "I volunteered," I said. "That makes it my problem." Illyra's jaw tightened. "You volunteered because you don't know how to stop sacrificing yourself." "That's rich," I replied, coming from the officer who stayed behind on Trask, 9 while everyone else evacuated. Her eyes flared. That was different. It never is. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The dropship's ramp lights pulsed amber, warning of an imminent launch window. If I missed it, Command would simply assign another pilot, another saboteur, another human who knew the odds, and went anyway. Illyra stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You can't leave," she said again, but now there was something beneath the anger. Something brittle. I sighed. "Captain, with respect, get out of my way." Her hands trembled. Then she said the last thing I expected. "I'm carrying your child." The hangar didn't explode into chaos. No alarms blared. No one gasped dramatically. Life simply stalled. I stared at her, certain I'd misheard. "You're what?" Ashari reproduction was notoriously complex. Their biochemistry didn't align easily with anyone else's, which was why cross-species compatibility studies were mostly theoretical. Mostly. Her voice shook, but her gaze didn't waver. 3 weeks gestation. Confirmed by medical. Hybrid viability probability, 78%. The words slammed into me harder than any kinetic round ever had. "Illyra," I whispered. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you would have stayed," she said. "And the fleet needs you more than I do." "That's not your call to make." She laughed bitterly. "Says the man boarding a suicide mission without consulting anyone who cares about him." I looked past her at the dropship, at the scarred hull, the patched plating, the human engineering that had kept it flying long past its intended service life. I had always believed my purpose was simple. Hold the line, buy time, do the job no one else could. But suddenly, that belief felt incomplete. "You should have told me sooner," I said. "I tried," she snapped. "Every time I opened my mouth, you were bleeding from somewhere new or prepping for another operation. Humans heal fast, yes, but you don't slow down enough for anyone to catch you." The amber lights shifted to red. Final boarding call. I took a step back from the ramp. The deck officer stared at me in disbelief. Illyra's shoulders sagged, just a fraction, as if she'd been holding herself upright by will alone. "You don't have to decide now," she said quietly. "Just don't leave like this." I closed my eyes. I had spent my entire career believing that humanity's strength lay in its willingness to endure, to step forward when logic said retreat, to bleed so others wouldn't have to. We were the shock absorbers of the galaxy, the species that turned impossible odds into grudging victories. But no one ever talked about the cost. The private cost. "I'm not staying," I said at last. Her face went pale. "I'm changing the mission." Command did not take the news well. A human lieutenant rerouting a classified operation because of new personal variables was not, strictly speaking, within protocol. I was relieved they didn't try to court-martial me on the spot. Instead, they argued. For hours. I laid out an alternative plan. A remote infiltration using human-designed microdrives and a delayed detonation cascade that could be triggered from outside the rift. Riskier in terms of timing, less certain an outcome, but not a guaranteed death sentence. The success probability drops to 41%, Admiral Kessler said, her voice cold over the hololink. And the survival probability increases to 60, I countered. Silence followed. Finally, she said, "You're compromising the mission." "No," I said. "I'm redefining victory." They gave me 72 hours to prove the concept. Humanity's engineers, some of the most stubborn people ever born, worked alongside Ashari technicians who were equal parts brilliant and offended by the challenge. I didn't sleep. I barely ate. Illyra watched me from the observation deck, one hand unconsciously resting against her abdomen. "You don't have to do this," she said on the second night. I smiled tiredly. "I already am." She hesitated. "I wasn't trying to trap you." I turned to her fully. "I know. She exhaled slowly. Ashari don't reveal offspring lightly. It's not just personal. It's cultural, political, and dangerous," I added. "Yes," she said. "Especially with a human." I stepped closer. "Illyra, if there's even a chance that child survives, I want to be there. Not as a symbol. Not as a sacrifice. As a father." Her eyes shimmered. On the third day, the prototype worked. The Combine's anchor gate collapsed inward, not in a violent explosion, but in a controlled gravitational inversion that folded the rift shut like a sealed wound. Their invasion fleet was stranded, their momentum broken without a single human life spent as a fuse. The galaxy exhaled. Command called it a miracle. The historians would call it strategy. But in the quiet afterward, standing beside Illyra in the station infirmary as medical scanners hummed softly, it felt like something else entirely. "You realize," she said, "this child will change things." "I hope so," I replied. The Ashari elders were cautious. A hybrid child, born of a human known for defying orders and an Ashari captain respected across 3 sectors, was not something tradition had prepared them for. But humanity had a way of forcing evolution, not through conquest, but through presence. Our child was born on a station orbiting a neutral star, under the watchful eyes of doctors from 6 species. When the infant cried, a sound sharp and unmistakably human, several of them flinched. I laughed through tears. Illyra held the child close, her crest glowing softly, a sign of deep contentment. "She's strong," she said. "She's human," I replied. "And Ashari." "And something new," Illyra added. News spread quickly, faster than I liked. Some hailed the child as a symbol of unity. Others whispered about dilution, about risk, about what it meant when humans didn't just fight for the galaxy, but began to belong to it. I returned to duty eventually. So did Illyra. But the missions changed. They had to. It turns out it's harder to send someone on a suicide run when they have a name waiting for them at home. Harder, but not impossible. Humanity still stood on the front lines. Still volunteered for the impossible. Still carried scars no one else wanted. But now, when Command asked for everything, we asked something back. A future. Years later, as I watched my daughter take her first unsteady steps along the station promenade, Illyra leaned against me. "You would have gone," she said quietly. That day in the hangar. Yes, I admitted. And now? I looked down at the child, at the faint shimmer of silver veins beneath human skin, at the way she laughed without fear. Now, I said, I fight differently. Illyra smiled. The galaxy would learn that lesson soon enough. Because humanity had always been willing to die for the stars.
But now?
Now we were willing to live for them too. The consequences didn't arrive all at once. They never did. At first, it was subtle, quiet recalibrations inside the machine of galactic politics. The Khepri Rift's collapse had done more than stop a war. It had exposed a truth the Council had long avoided. Humanity was no longer just a shield species. We were no longer expendable muscle. We were stakeholders. The first sign came 6 months after my daughter's birth. I was summoned, not ordered, to the unified council chambers. That alone told me everything. I stood at the center of a circular hall carved from obsidian stone and light, surrounded by representatives of a dozen civilizations. Some watched me with curiosity, others with calculation, a few with open distrust. Illyra sat behind me in the observer's tier, our daughter asleep against her chest. I felt her presence like gravity. Lieutenant Commander Elias Ward, the speaker intoned, you are hereby recognized not as a representative of Earth, but as a representative of consequence. That phrase rippled through the chamber. The speaker continued. Your actions at the Khepri Rift altered the balance of the war without sacrificing a single allied life. This defied predictive models across all member species. I inclined my head. Humans are good at defying models. A few diplomats bristled. One laughed quietly. And yet, the speaker said, you did so after refusing a direct suicide deployment. Yes. Do you regret that refusal? I thought of the hangar, of Illyra standing in my path, of the weight of words that had changed everything. No, I said. I regret that it took a pregnancy to force the question. Silence settled, heavy, uncomfortable, necessary. The speaker's voice softened. You are aware that many believe your decision weakened deterrence. Then they misunderstand deterrence. I replied. Deterrence isn't about showing how fast you'll die. It's about proving you don't have to. That statement would be quoted for years. The Council voted that day to amend the Human Deployment Accords. No longer would human forces be assigned exclusively to high-fatality missions. Risk would be shared. Responsibility distributed. Humanity had not asked for dominion. We had asked for dignity. After the session, Illyra met me in the corridor. They listened, she said quietly. They had to, I replied. You don't ignore a species once it starts building a future instead of a grave. Our daughter stirred, her eyes opening, dark, alert, already too aware of the world around her. Ashari children matured slowly. Human children adapted quickly. Hybrid children? No one knew. That uncertainty frightened some. It inspired others. Years passed. The war with the Virex Combine ended not with a final battle, but with a fracture, internal collapse driven by resource denial and failed psychological modeling. They had built their doctrine on the assumption that humans would always pay the ultimate cost. They never recalculated once we stopped. I retired from frontline operations when my daughter turned 5. Not because I was ordered to, because I chose to. I became an instructor instead, training mixed-species units, teaching them how humans planned, how we endured, and most importantly, how we adapted when survival was no longer enough. Illyra rose through the ranks faster than anyone predicted. Her command style changed too. Less rigid. More human. The Ashari noticed. They didn't resist it. Our daughter, Ael, became something of a quiet legend. She walked comfortably between cultures, learned languages effortlessly, and asked questions no one else thought to ask. "Why did humans agree to die so easily?" she once asked me. I didn't soften the truth. Because we thought that was all we were good for. And now, I smiled. Now we're good for more. On her 10th birthday, the council invited her to stand before them. Not as a symbol, not as a spectacle, but as a citizen. The youngest cross-species citizen in recorded history. She didn't make a speech. She simply said, "If I exist, then peace is possible." You don't have to like that, but you do have to accept it. Some of them looked afraid. Others looked hopeful. That was enough. Late one cycle, years later, I found Illyra standing on the observation deck, watching the stars drift past. "She tried to stop you," I said softly, echoing words from a lifetime ago. "She succeeded," she replied. "Just not the way I planned." I wrapped an arm around her. I was ready to die that day. "I know. And you still stood in my way." "Yes," she said. "Because warriors who only know how to die never learn how to protect what comes after." Below us, the galaxy turned scarred, healing, changing. Human ships still patrolled the edges. Still answered distress calls. Still ran toward danger when others hesitated. But now, when they did, it wasn't because their lives were cheap. It was because their lives were valuable. And that made all the difference. Because the moment humanity stopped fighting to die was the moment the galaxy realized we were fighting to live.